Hey guys, welcome back to Triple F Shooting. Today we will be looking at the CZ Hammer Coach. If you've ever had any inkling of getting into cowboy action shooting, or you just like watching Western movies, anything like that, this thing is going to scratch all of those itches. So let's get into it.
Man, I'm pissing the wasps off. I wish he'd go land by the target. I'd shoot at him. There has to be a nest around here.
I was just kind of thinking maybe.
Well, we'll go from back here and see if the pattern looks any good. I have one more reload.
So as you can imagine, the Hammer Coach doesn't have a ton of practical use. It is capable on a skeet range. You could hunt with it, although there are better options. So what we're going to talk about today is really just going to pertain to like its overall just fun at the range value and its cowboy action shooting value. Now, before we go really anywhere, if you cowboy action shoot with this, you'd better be really good at running the hammers, or you'll want to compete in only like frontier class where everyone's sort of required to use a certain level of firearm, and I believe hammered shotguns are a must there. So that'll kind of keep the playing field even, but for me, cowboy action shooting has not really ever been about the competition side. It's more about the firearms and just getting to use them in multiple three-gun-ish style scenarios. So absolutely enjoyable piece right off the bat. But real quick, we'll just go over the general specs of the gun, and then we'll jump out to the range and check out the whole thing in like much better lighting and go through all of its, what makes it special. But real quick, this thing weighs about 7 pounds. It's just under that. It's riding around with 20-inch barrels, and as you can see by the name, has exposed hammers. So that's going to create quite a bit of, however you see it, either fun or just time added to your reload and firing process. In cowboy action shooting, this thing, it handles pretty much like any other coach gun you're going to find, even all the way down to your Stoeger. I think they've got 3 or 4 models of that thing, but the Stoeger coach guns, you can get them in nickel, all the other matte nickel, or just black, 20 gauge, all that good stuff. You're not going to notice enormous differences between this gun and that gun as far as just general shooting and handling. Most of these are going to feel pretty similar. You will, however, have differences in form that create a little bit of a feel difference, but for the most part, you have a short, lightweight, 2-round gun that's going to recoil generally substantially. So the shooting impressions are going to sound a whole lot like every other double-barrel shotgun that you've probably ever fired. The differences in the CZ Hammer Coach are all in its basically fit and finish. This is a Turkish-made gun. You'll see that in closer detail in the kind of swing-through video close-up of this thing, but as you're looking at it, you'll notice that all of the lines are really well done. The wood meets up to the metal very cleanly and consistently all the way around. Metal to metal fit is all very smooth. There are no big jagged lines that you'd see in occasions on those Stoeger coach guns. But they also cost about half as much, so worth keeping in mind. So to get into it, let's start off with just the general shooting and reloading process of this thing.
cool thing is, without any actual reaming of the chambers or anything like that, this gun came from the factory where pretty much decent quality shells kind of fall out of it. Every once in a while you get a little bit of a swell and you have to really shuck to get them out of there, but a lot of the time just breaking the gun open and flipping it back just a little bit is enough to get you there. I am by no means like a competition cowboy shooter or anything like that. There's a wasp. You're good. Quit running from it.
Sorry, I don't
like them.
I don't wasp well. Oh, lost my mic. We'll just cut that out.
Yeah. Or not.
No.
I'm by no means a competition shooter or anything like that, so my methods and stuff are no thing to go by. But there's a couple different ways to try and run this thing. I've been experimenting with them ever since I got this thing. I love the hammered shotgun, but it does throw in a little bit of a conundrum in the fact that I have to cock those things every single time I reload. So one method I try is basically as soon as you shuck the gun open, to kind of keep my hands from having to move as much, sweeping back and doing it when I'm coming down for my shells. So let's say I just shot, bang bang, emptied the gun, I'm coming from here, I've broken it open, I'm going to sweep by, cock both hammers, get the gun back on my shoulder, watch the shells in, close the gun, and go to my next load. I've tried it a couple other ways. I don't think anything else works quite that good. So I just shucked my shells and my hammers are still up. So another way I can attempt it is to do the cocking as I'm putting the shells in, since my hand's kind of all right there anyway. So let's say I've shot, shucked, I'm back to my shoulder, drop shells, cocked. So what we should try is putting that to a timer and see which one actually goes faster for me. All right, so most of the time in cowboy action, we're gonna start with like the gun on a table laid open or something like that. For this particular one, I'm gonna start with it shouldered, not cocked. The first part, how can we do this scientifically? Let's start with the gun loaded and cocked. I'll just shoot two and then do each type of reload. That way we're not factoring in my ability to start the gun. So here we go. So I will just close the gun on the buzzer. So the first time I'm going to unload and sweep the hammers, then reload and shoot, and we'll see which one's quicker. Here we go. I missed bigger than crap, but it was more about the shooting, right? So that was 649 on my second round there. Oh, and one thing of note, we are using double triggers because this gun's classy and fancy. I actually like the double trigger better than a single. More for looks and form than anything. But, all right. We'll put the shotguns in the exact same position, or the shells in the exact same position. All right, this time we're gonna shoot, unload, reload, and cock it. So that was 649. Let's see if we do any better. Let's see if I hit any better too. Forgot. All right, here we go. All right, that was 684. So I don't know if like 0.4 of a second is worth worrying about. A lot of that could be in just me fumbling the shells. That's another thing about cowboy action when you're loading off a belt like this. Lots of different ways to grab the shells, and I don't do it right. I don't do it like the pros do. They come in from the side and kind of hook the shells with their thumb on top so they can shuck them in. For whatever reason, my main habit is always to like go in like fingers so I can keep a spacing, but then like that, I'll grab a couple. But essentially, one way they do it is to grab them across the top from the side almost and pull like that so that they have a little more control of the spacing, or at least they're not wobbling out like that. And then they guide them in and shove them home. So since they're in there, We'll shoot that really far spade and see if it's any good for anything. So at that distance, we are cylinder bore and 20-inch barrels. That pattern's just kind of flopping all around in there. Let's chuck it. All right, so the way I do it, which is not the correct way to do it, is I reach straight down and pick it up with my thumb and fingers between. And essentially I can do kind of the same thing. The problem is I can't force the shells home. Like, I can feed them this way, but I don't have anything to push on the backside. So when I'm coming into the gun, I can see everything I'm doing, funnel them in. You can see I have to split them a little bit, and then I have to kind of like roll my hand around. The guys that are a lot faster than me don't do it that way. That's just, for whatever reason, how I tend to pick them up. So not the best way to do it, but that's why you're seeing me do it that way. And again, we have 2 more shells. That is a huge bee. We'll just go back at the coffins up close here. And you can see, like, just opening the gun, that they kind of fall out. Got like a little guy hanging out with you. Be gone, little bee. Nothing there for you. Okay. He's all gone. One other thing about this gun is, because I haven't shot it an ever-loving crap ton, it's probably got like maybe 800 to 1,000 shells on it. Breaking the gun down is still very stiff. I have to really shift my hand up to get to it. Once I do that, it pretty much just falls open, but getting out there, I have to have my arm in the correct position where I basically have the stock kind of paddled, or I'm against my shoulder. And then I really have to focus on getting that all the way over, which is a good thing. I don't want my gun to be loose and falling apart. But the guys that are really good at it, they get up here and hit that, and it just like flops open real fast and much smoother than me. But I prefer the hammers because I'm here for the form and the feel rather than the competition. So there's not a lot of competitive bones in this here body, is what it is.
One other thing of note, when I am running this shotgun, and as you saw in the video, the shells are pretty much just ejecting on their own. I didn't have any times where I really had to pluck out of the gun. We are using decent shells. It seems like Winchester AA's are kind of the standard, or at least the very successful people that kind of taught me the first few times I went cowboy action shooting. That's what they're using almost exclusively. I also like the Federal Ultra Clays. I don't know if they're making these under that name anymore. I think they're called Top Gun now. And they may have dropped them down to a low brass and non-coated or non-brass looking case head, but I've had no issues with Federal. The only shells I've ever had trouble with that kind of swell up in this gun a little bit, and you have to really pluck them out, and sometimes can even make the gun hard to open due to the extraction, are the Winchester Universals that used to be available at Walmart. Not the highest quality shells. They work in pumps for me most of the time, but in this particular double, I'm not sure if it's a chamber issue or what, but it doesn't really like it very much. So just because it's double barrel does not mean it's like infallible and will eat anything you put into it. If you buy the really, really cheap shells, in my experience, you'll get occasional issues with it, and it is not just going to slip free just by opening the gun and tilting a little bit. So something to keep in mind there. So as you can imagine, if you are running a firearm that only puts in 2 shells at a time, and you have to fire, you know, anywhere from 8 to 10 shells, maybe less, maybe more, depending upon the stage, you're going to be reloading a lot. So that's what you probably want to work on the most with this firearm. That being said, this thing is super stiff out of the box. In fact, to this day, it is still fairly stiff. I've got quite a few hundred rounds through this thing by now, and it still has a little bit of hesitation when it comes open. The thing isn't just flapping open like some of your cowboy action guns are going to be tuned up to do. I have never really done any hardcore polishing on the parts to this thing because, again, the competitive part isn't all of it to me. I would like the gun to last as long as it can, and I enjoy just shooting the thing and running it, you know, like any of the other cowboy guns that I have.
All right, so you can see we have a case hardened or acid washed, whatever it really is, butt plate that is definitely steel. And the wood grain's not bad on this one. This is a Turkish gun. You can see the laser checkering. Then the trigger guard comes in and kind of matches up where the tang ends. I do have a safety on the tang. The nice thing about this particular gun is it does not auto safe every time, so I don't have to flip that back forward every time I break the gun open, which is one of my favorite things about this gun. There's decent engraving along the lock plate, and the hammers stick pretty high up with a kind of a mule ear shape. You see I do have double triggers. The front trigger is the right barrel, the back trigger is the left. On this it doesn't make a whole lot of difference because they're both cylinder bore wide open. On a more traditional full-length shotgun you might have like a full and modified, full being your left barrel. But when you come up into the receiver, it is a very nice thin shape. You get that really cool kind of bulged back side of your chambers there, and a really pretty engraving on the receiver itself. And you can tell where the finish, because it's like an acid wash or whatever, it did get a little bit of moisture and oxidation at one point, which I hate, but it is what it is. Moving in to the actual chamber itself, you can see they have kind of an engraving to denote where it ends, but this is a 3-inch gun at the maximum for what it is. I don't think I'll ever be shooting 3-inch through it. You can see Huglu, or however you want to pronounce that there, the Huglu. That is because this is a Turkish-made gun licensed by CZ. And we have a smooth rib. There is no engraving, cuts, or otherwise to help kill any sunlight or glare. I've never really noticed it being an issue for what you're doing with it. It's all very fast and close. Bottom side of the gun, you can see Hammer Classic. When they were making these guns, they had a 30-inch version with chokes and the 20-inch version open bore, and it's actually the Hammer Coach, but they use the same receiver regardless. And you can see more of the checkering on the foregrip. It has a very skinny foregrip, so as you're running this thing at speed, it tends to get very hot because you're actually kind of up on the barrels. You can see where my thumb rides that left barrel. It's a little bit less finished there because of the way you're gripping. You can get down here and grip just that, but I don't feel like I have as much control, so I'm usually up on the entire gun. And then up at the front, you just have a very basic bead sight, nothing fancy. Does what it's supposed to do. Popping the gun open, you've got some serial number stuff in here. You've got your extractor. It is not an ejector. All that thing does is lifts the shells enough for you to grab them, or just starts opening it so you can shuck them. Ejectors would actually launch the thing back. And other than that, that's about it. On this side of the gun, it's upside down, I know, but you can see the CZ logo and the location of import, or where they're based out of. But very good looking gun, especially for cowboy action shooting. Most of the time they're pretty rough and tumble, but it's a super pretty gun. But you're going to want to compete in like Frontier or something if you're using this, so that everyone has hammers and it's not just you being put way at a disadvantage to everybody that's using the hammerless and most likely single trigger. On that note, I do not ever notice that the double triggers slow me down a bunch. It seems like just in the recoil alone, your hand can slip back to that second trigger without any real issue. I don't know that I could fire this thing a whole lot faster accurately with a single trigger. So another thing to keep aware of.
This thing gives you excellent fit and finish out of the box, but you're going to have to work with it if you are looking to compete at a high level. This probably isn't your gun if that's the case. You can do it, and some people will, but you may be better served buying an older side-by-side and then having some work done to it, or one of those Stogers and having work done to it, rather than spending $1,000 and then adding another $1,000 to it, all in what you're looking for. But shooting this thing gives you a feeling kind of like no other. If you like old Western movies, the Doc Holliday scene from Tombstone, you get all of that in this firearm. It is a light, short little beast. and when you're shooting it, it feels powerful. Being that it's only cylinder bore and only meant for up close work, that's kind of what you're going to do. If you are actively looking to get patterns out of buckshot and things like that, it's going to open up fairly quickly, but no real difference there between it and any other 18-inch cylinder bore. It's going to be just as much about the shell you use as anything else. And again, this is mostly toward cowboy action shooting. I don't think many people are going to buy a $1,000 hammered shotgun for defensive work. Now, as we mentioned in the flyby, all the close-ups, there is a Hammer Classic, and those actually are still available. In fact, as of the time of this review, May 2nd, 23, you can actually still buy the Hammer Coach. It looks like they've done another run of them. All I did was check Gunbroker, and quite a few different sellers have 10 plus of these things. For a while, I didn't see any of them and assumed that they had just been dropped entirely in favor of the Sharp Tail or whatever other name they have, where it's just a single trigger, no hammers. So these are still available. So if this is something that interests you, you're not just plugging around on a secondary market hoping to God you can find one for less than $1,500. You can still buy the thing. So just to rant a little bit about what this shotgun does for me. This was actually given to me as a wedding present when I got married. My wife bought it for me. If you saw her gun video, I bought her that Kimber Sapphire Pro, so we both traded guns basically on our around our wedding, which, you know, that's probably a lot of why we're married, is because we can handle that together. But that gives this gun kind of a special feel to me. But beyond that, this thing sits in very well with all of my other, you know, less than practical but really cool and really difficult to replace the feeling of shooting these old style firearms in a new iteration that I don't have to worry so much about. Just the nostalgia of picking this thing up and going to the range and running the hammers, doing the reloads, it's not really like anything modern can give you. It just isn't. The double barrel shotgun has been around essentially since not too long after firearms were invented, and these are sort of the workhorse class of all firearms throughout history, whether it be front stuffing black powder all the way up to, you know, the mid 1900s. Double barrels have been a staple in pretty much anybody's gun library. This one particularly is more the defensive style, thus the name Coach gun. But when you are running the thing, you wish you had a big old leather duster on and all your shot shells hanging off you and pouches and across your belt, and just makes you want to go out and play cowboy. And that sounds, you know, less than mature, but it really does do that for you. The only thing negative I can say about the whole thing, I kind of said in the flyby, the finish on the thing, even though it's case hardened, is beautiful. It's really pretty. You can tell it's not done like standard case hardening. It's kind of like an acid wash sort of thing. When you're out shooting cowboy action in the summer and it's hot and you're sweating, you pretty much have to oil this thing immediately after you're done, because I got it home one day, forgot to oil it up when I put it in the safe. We were going back out the next day, oiled it up then, and had little bitty dots of oxidation on my throw lever here, a little bit on each hammer, and on my safety. So something to keep in mind there. If you're going to run this thing very often, you do have to make sure you keep it oiled and keep your sweat off of it, or it's not going to hold up super well. The thing looks great. It still functions great. I have no looseness, no slack anywhere, and like I said, I've got quite a few hundred rounds through it, so the quality is absolutely there. Alright guys, this is a shorter video, all things considered. Hopefully you enjoyed watching me and my wife squeal at bugs and wasps during the thing. That was quite an entertaining ordeal that we were fighting along with, but if you are in the market for something like this, I get no sponsorship from any of the guns that we talk about at all. We are a small channel, so when I recommend something, it's purely from a bias standpoint because I really like the thing. So if you're in the market for something like this, if this interests you, I really don't think you can go wrong with it. If I had to do it over again, I probably would actually buy the 30-inch barrels. just because I think it would be a little bit more fun to shoot clays with. It can use chokes, maybe even hunt a little bit with it, doves or something like that. But all in all, absolutely beautiful, very functional firearm that works great for cowboy action shooting, or if you just have a hankering for an old school cowboy-esque firearm. You can't go wrong with the CZ Hammer Coach. So thanks for watching Triple F Shooting, and we'll see you in the next video.